Two heads, one tail. Young yin. Three tails, old yin. Three tails, old yin. Three heads, old yang. Two tails, one head. Young yang. 3 tails, old yin. We'll read a brief passage out of Wen Tzu, Understanding the Mysteries, another great classic of Chinese Taoism containing teachings also attributed to the author of the Tao Te Ching. (153) Lao Tzu said, "Of the energies of the universe, none is greater than harmony. Harmony means the regulation of yin and yang, the division of night and day. Thus myriad beings are born in spring and mature in autumn. Birth and maturation require the vitality of harmony. So accumulated yin does not produce, and accumulated yang does not develop. Only when yin and yang interact are they capable of producing harmony. Therefore, the way of sages is to be magnanimous, yet stern, strict, yet warm, gentle, yet straightforward, fierce, yet humane. What is too hard snaps, and what is too soft folds. The way is right in between hardness and softness. Benevolence pushed too far becomes weakness, which is undignified. Strictness pushed too far becomes ferocity, which is inharmonious. Love pushed too far becomes indulgence, which is ineffectual. Punishment pushed too far becomes calamity, which means loss of familiars. This is why harmony is valued." 154. Lao Tzu said, "What enables a nation to survive is attainment of the way. What causes a nation to perish is obstruction of reason. Therefore, sages see the development of society by observing its signs. Virtue flourishes and declines, fashions being the first indications thereof. So those who attain the way of life will inevitably become great, even if they are small. Those who have the signs of morbidity will inevitably fail, even if they are now successful. When a nation is moribund, greatness is not enough to depend on. But if the way is carried out therein, even a small nation is not to be slighted. Thus survival is in attainment of the way, not in smallness. Ruin is in losing the way, not in greatness. The rulers of a confused country strive for expansion of territory, not for humanity and justice. They strive for high positions, not for the way and virtue. This is abandoning the means of survival and creating the causes of destruction. If they disturb the lights of the sun, moon, and stars above, and lose the hearts of the masses of people below, who could not blame them? Therefore, those who examine the self do not attribute it to others. When those who acted as leaders in ancient times practiced it deeply, it was called the way and virtue. When they practiced it shallowly, it was called humanity and justice. When they practiced it slightly, it was called courtesy and knowledge. These 6 things constitute the fabric of a nation. When they are practiced deeply, then blessings are richly received. When they are practiced shallowly, then blessings are slightly received. When they are practiced to the fullest, the whole world goes along. In ancient times, to cultivate the way and its virtue could bring order to the whole land. To cultivate humanity and justice could bring order to one state. To cultivate courtesy and knowledge could bring order to one country. Those whose virtue was rich were great, and those whose virtue was slight were small. So the way is not to establish oneself by aggressiveness, not to conquer by forcefulness, not to gain by competitiveness. Establishment is in being promoted by the world. Victory is in the spontaneous accord of the world. And gain is in having the world give it to you, not in taking it for yourself. Thus you will become established if you are unaggressive. You will be victorious if you are flexible and yielding. And you will gain if you are humane and just. If you do not contend, no one can contend with you. This is why the way is to the world as rivers and oceans. The way of nature is spoiled by those who contrive, lost by those who try to grasp. Look at those who want to have a great reputation and therefore seek and struggle for it. We see they cannot stop themselves. But even if they gain it by grasping, it does not stay. Repute cannot be obtained by seeking. It must be given by the world. Those who give it resort to it. What the world resorts to is virtue. Therefore, it is said that the world resorts to those of higher virtue. The land resorts to those of higher humanity. A state resorts to those of higher justice. And a country resorts to those of higher courtesy. The people will not take to anyone who lacks these four qualities. To arm and deploy people who do not have confidence in their government is a dangerous course of action. That is why it is said that weapons are instruments of ill omen, to be used only when unavoidable. When you win by killing and wounding people, do not glorify it. Thus it is said that brambles grow on a ground where people have died. Weep for them with sadness. Lay them to rest with the rites of mourning. This is why superior people strive for the virtue of the way and do not set great store by the use of the military. 155. Wen Tzu asked, why are humaneness, justice, and politeness considered slighter than the virtue of the way? Lao Tzu said, those who practice humaneness deliberately always calculate it in terms of sorrow and happiness. Those who practice justice deliberately always understand it in terms of taking and giving. One's sorrow and happiness cannot extend to all within the 4 seas. The goods and money in an exhausted treasury are not enough to provide for all people. Therefore we know that it is better to practice the way and put its virtue into effect. Based on the essential nature of heaven and earth, all beings right themselves, and the whole world is fulfilled. Humaneness and justice are dependent and subsidiary. Therefore, great people live by the deep, not by the shallow. As for politeness, it is an embellishment of substance. Humaneness is an effect of benevolence. Therefore, politeness is to be regulated according to human feelings so that it does not exceed what is substantial. Humaneness does not mean to squander charity. Seeing off the dead with feelings of sorrow can be called humaneness. The nurturing of life does not force people to do what they cannot do, or stop them from doing what they cannot help doing. When assessments of measure do not miss what is appropriate, censure and praise have no way to arise. So in the composition of music, it is enough to join feelings of enjoyment, not going beyond harmony, understanding the proportions of diminuendo and crescendo, mastering the appropriate measures of magnificence and austerity. Things are not this way in latter-day societies. Words and actions are opposed to each other. Feelings and appearances contradict each other. Polite manners are embellished to the point of tedium. Music is agitated to the point of licentiousness. Customs are sunk in mundanity, and censure and praise cluster in the courts. This is why realized people abandon these things and do not use them. A man cannot outrun a swift horse, but if the horse were put into a cart, it could not outrun a man. Therefore, those who use the way skillfully employ the resources of other people to accomplish their tasks, using what they can do for what they cannot. When rulers give them time, the people repay with goods. When rulers treat them politely, the people will go to their death to repay. For this reason, when there are nations in peril, there are no safe rulers. When there are worried rulers, there are no happy ministers. Those whose virtue exceeds their rank are honored. Those whose salary exceeds their virtue are accursed. The nobility of virtue involves no aggrandizement. A just salary is not too much. Those who are ennobled without virtue are stealing rank. Those who take unjustly are stealing wealth. Sages are comfortable in poverty, enjoying the way. They do not harm life by craving and do not burden themselves by materialism. Therefore, they do not deviate from justice by taking what they do not deserve. In ancient times, those without virtue were not honored. Those without ability were not entrusted with official posts. Those without merit were not rewarded, and those who had done no wrong were not punished. When people were promoted, it was done with courtesy. When people were dismissed, it was done with justice. In the age of petty people, when people are promoted, it is as if they are elevated to the skies. And when people are dismissed, it is as if they are plunged into an abyss. When we speak of ancient times, we do so to criticize the present. Those who size up horses miss the lean ones. Those who choose men miss the impoverished ones. When the larder is full of rich meats, no one cares about bones and gristle. Superior people look into realities and do not believe words of slander. When rulers have erred, ministers who do not admonish them are not loyal, while rulers who do not listen when admonished are not enlightened. Leaders who do not worry when the people are depressed are not intelligent. So to keep self-control even to the death in difficulty is the job of servants of society. To clothe the cold and feed the hungry is the benevolence of kind fathers. For the great to serve the small is called changing people. For the small to oppress the great is called rebelling against nature. Although they may climb to the skies at first, later they will inevitably fall into an abyss. This is why villages do not abandon the aged even if they are helpless, while courts have differences in the status of ranks. Those who reverse nobles do so because they consider them near to the ruler. Those who revere nobles do so because they consider them near to the ruler. Those who honor the aged do so because they consider them near to their parents. Those who respect their elders do so because they consider them near to their elder siblings. Those who are born into nobility become arrogant. Those who are born into riches become extravagant. Therefore, wealth and status are not conducive to understanding the way. Few indeed are those who watch themselves and are able to avoid doing anything wrong. To learn without tiring of it is the way to govern oneself. To teach without tiring of it is the way to govern the people. Few indeed are those who associate with wise teachers and good companions and yet do wrong. To know practical goodness is called knowledge. To love practical goodness is called humaneness. To honor practical goodness is called justice. To respect practical goodness is called courtesy. And to enjoy practical goodness is called music. In ancient times, those who worked skillfully for the world did not contrive anything, yet nothing was not done. So there's a manner of working for the world. If you find out how, there is accomplishment without striving. If you do not find out how, your actions will inevitably be unlucky. The manner in which to work for the world is to do so hesitantly, as if you were crossing a mighty river in winter, cautiously, as if in fear of all around, respectfully, as if you were a guest. Be as liberal as runoff from ice, as pure as a simpleton, as opaque as a suspension, as broad as a valley. This is how to work for the world. To be as hesitant as if crossing a mighty river in winter means not to act presumptuously. To be as cautious as if in fear of all around means to be wary of all that is harmful. To be as respectful as if one were a guest means to be humble and reverential. To be as liberal as runoff from ice means not daring to pile up treasures. To be as pure as a simpleton means not daring to do things carelessly. To be as opaque as a suspension means not presuming to clarity. To be broad as a valley means not daring to be completely full. Those who do not go ahead presumptuously do not dare to be the first to retreat. Those who are wary of harm to themselves remain flexible and yielding, not daring to be haughty. Those who are humble and reverential lower themselves and honor other people. Those who do not dare to pile up treasures reduce themselves and do not dare to be tight. Those who do not dare to do things carelessly consider themselves lacking and do not presume to be complete. Those who do not presume to clarity remain in obscurity and ignominy and do not presume to the new and fresh. Those who do not dare to be completely full see what they lack and do not presume themselves worthy. The way is such that it is possible to go ahead by retreating, possible to be honored by maintaining flexibility, possible to be elevated by lowering oneself, possible to be fulfilled by diminishing oneself, possible to be complete by faulting oneself, possible to be new and fresh by being obscure and ignominious, possible to be good by seeing one's lack. The way contrives nothing, but there is nothing it does not do. 156. Lao Tzu said, "In matters of learning, if you can understand the division between the celestial and the human, penetrate the roots of order and confusion, keep this awareness by clarifying the mind and purifying the attention. See the end and the beginning, and return to open non-reification. This can be called attainment. The roots of order are humaneness and justice. The branches of order are laws and regulations. Human life is based on the roots, not on the branches. The roots and branches are one body. Their duality is in the nature of preference. Those who give priority to the roots before the branches are called superior people. Those who give priority to the branches before the roots are called petty people. Laws are originated to assist justice. To take laws so seriously that justice is abandoned is to value the hat and shoes while forgetting the head and feet. Humaneness and justice are broad and high. If you extend the breadth of something without increasing its thickness, it breaks. If you increase the height of a building without broadening its foundation, it topples. So if you do not make the beams large, they cannot sustain heavy weights. For bearing a heavy weight, nothing compares to a beam. For bearing the responsibility for a nation, nothing compares to virtue. The people are to a ruler as a foundation of a citadel, as the roots of a tree. If the roots are deep, the tree is stable. If the foundation is thick, the building on top is secure. So whatever business is not rooted in the virtue of the way cannot be taken as a norm. Words that do not accord with the ancient kings cannot be taken as a guide. The art of facile talk, picking up on a single deed or a single work, is not the comprehensive way for the world. 157. Lao Tzu said, "The way to govern people is like an expert charioteer. He adjusts the bits and bridles properly, stands in the center inside, and accords with the will of the horses outside. Therefore he can take to the road and go long distances, with energy to spare, going forth and back and round and about, all as he wills. This is a true attainment of the art. Now those who hold power are the chariot of the ruler, and the great ministers are the ruler's team of horses. The ruler should not leave the security of the chariot, and his hands should not lose hold of the hearts of the team of horses. If the horses are unruly, even an expert charioteer cannot take to the road. If the rulers and ministers are not in harmony, even a sage cannot establish order. If you hold to the way for guidance, then ordinary talent can be put to the fullest use. If you clarify people's role for them, then treachery can be stopped. When things come up, you observe their evolution. When events occur, you respond to their developments. When there is no disorder near at hand, then there is order far away. Attaining the natural, spontaneous way without making use of chance instruction, you may accomplish myriad undertakings without mishap. 158. Lao Tzu said, "In general, the practice of the way involves blocking off errors, stopping them before they happen. It does not value self-approval, it values inability to do wrong. Therefore it is said, do not cause anything to be desired, or there will be constant seeking. Do not let anything be up for grabs, or there will be constant struggle. In this way, people's desires melt and the impartial way is carried out. When those who have more than enough stop at good measure, and those with less than enough gain access to what they need, the world can therefore be won. If you listen to criticism and praise instead of paying attention to the work people do, if you rely on factions and cliques instead of considering merit and effort, then weird arts will be perpetuated, while ordinary work will not progress. The mores of the people will become confused in the country, while the successful ministers will contend at court. Therefore, if you have the way, you guide people thereby. Without the way, you will be controlled by others. 159. Lao Tzu said, "There are constants for governing nations, but the basis is benefiting the people. There are ways for promulgating policies, but the precedent is to implement them. If you benefit the people, it is not necessary to be ruled by precedent. If you manage everything, it is not necessary to follow custom. Therefore, the laws of sages change with the times, and their manners evolve with customs. Their clothing and machinery are each made conveniently functional. Their laws and regulations are each based on what is appropriate. Therefore, to repudiate changing the ancient is not quite appropriate. To go along with customs is not enough to consider superior. To recite the books of ancient kings is not as good as hearing their words, and hearing their words is not as good as attaining that whereby they spoke. Those who attain that whereby they spoke find that words cannot express it. Therefore, a way that can be spoken is not an eternal way, and a term that can be designated is not a permanent name. Thus, what sages go by is called the way, which, like percussion instruments, is not to be changed once tuned. Concrete affairs, on the other hand, are like stringed instruments, which are returned after a piece is ended. Laws, regulations, rites, and music are tools of order. They are not what makes order order. Therefore, the ultimate way cannot be discussed with trivial scholars because they look to conventions for enlightenment and are bound up in dogma. We will read our bottom or inner trigram of our primary hexagram as broken, 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 which is Kun, earth. Kun is earth, open to receive and support what comes to her, providing for its full development. She makes inspiration manifest, gives it form and sustains its growth. Earth is available to be used, ready to lend her strength to the work without limit. She protects and accepts all things in their totality, present and potential, in an unconditional embrace. Earth is mother, found in the southwest and the harvest time of late summer and early autumn. Our top or outer trigram of our primary hexagram will be read as solid, solid, broken. Which is the trigram. Dewey, lake or marsh. Dewey is lake and marsh, abundant energy that teems with life. She is the impulse to communicate, share and exchange, and delights in both inner and outer conversation. She brings things into circulation and gives them voice. This is the sheer enjoyment of participating in life to the full, expressing ourselves and hearing others and satisfying our desires. Lake is the youngest daughter, spirit of the fertile west and of autumn. Our primary hexagram will be lake or marsh above earth. Which gives us hexagram 45. We will read our secondary hexagram, which is formed by the lines with X's or O's in them transforming to their opposite. Thus, a old yin line will transform into a young yang line, and an old yang line will transform into a young yin line, which will give us a bottom or inner trigram on our secondary hexagram of broken solid solid, which is the trigram Xun, wind or wood. Xun is both wind and living plants. Whatever penetrates, spreads, and grows, shaping itself to the space available or shaping that space to its own nature. She is responsive flexibility, sensitively improvising and adapting. Like the wind, she can always find a way through because she never creates any resistance, and so her influence is subtle and gradual, but far-reaching. In the family of trigrams, Xun is the eldest daughter, gentle and submissive. She belongs to the southeast and to late spring and early summer. Our top or outer trigram of our secondary hexagram will be read as broken solid solid. Which is Xun, wind or wood. So we have wind or wood above wind or wood as our secondary hexagram. Which gives us hexagram 57. We'll be reading primarily from I-ming's Taoist I-ching. He wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept, and Thomas Cleary has translated it for us. Real quick, if anyone is feeling psychic energy, so to speak, maybe in ways that are uncomfortable, in even allowing alchemical teachings to permeate your subconscious, even that alone, I feel, in fact, it's largely why I participate in this, but if you find that you're experiencing uncomfortable sensations, for instance, I once meditated with a rock tucked into a hat on one side of my head, and I ended up bursting a blood vessel in my eye. Anyway, psychic energy is a real thing. I've found there are things you can use as tools to help you regulate the energy that's going on inside you rather than it being chaotic. This is a weight that sits on the hose of a kitchen faucet. I'm a plumber, and I found this while I was working. They don't make them like this anymore. This is pretty vintage. And anyway, if you've heard of a Vajra thunderbolt, it's a brass meditative weapon in Tibetan Buddhism and Hinduism, but it's the idea behind it is that it is the unstoppable force and the immovable object all in one, in a spiritual sense, I suppose. But if you can get a hold of something solid like this, with a hole in the center of it, I've made one myself out of a brass nipple. It is a 3/8 inch by 4 inch long brass nipple with a 3/8 brass coupling and a 3/8 by 1/2 inch brass coupling. And I've created what looks like a little mag light or lightsaber. But you can use it as a handle almost. I have meditated and visualized something like the idea of the tree of life infinitely going down beneath me and infinitely stretching above. And strands of energy, if you will, going up and down. And I imagine grabbing them and churning them in a favorable way to steady energy, if you will. And you can take things like this that have been used traditionally in Tibetan Buddhism, right? These are obviously simpler versions, but for me, I like the way they have a hole down the center. The traditional Vajra thunderbolt doesn't have a hole all the way down the center like this, but coming from a Taoist perspective with the emphasis on the feminine and the idea of space being left for the Tao, so to speak. Shaman used to call themselves hollow reeds, right? You're leaving space for spirit. Also, some believe you can look through objects like hagstones and see the fairy realm, so that's also very interesting. Anyway, I suggest picking up some items. This can't have cost more than $25, $30, and yet it has become a very helpful little spiritual tool, if you will, for me. And this one, finding it at random, that's pretty zen. Things that happen randomly, right? I've got a lot of items I've picked up to attempt to control or govern my ascent. But this one I turn back to the most, in that if I'm feeling shaky or energetic in a bad way, I can kind of focus that energy in a sense and imagine myself as being hollow. And the unstoppable force and immovable object, it's very grounding. I think there's a reason Buddhist monks, Tibetan Buddhist monks, might meditate with something made from brass. Anyway, as an aside, now getting into our readings. Yeah, intense psychic energy that can be created even just through subconscious taking in of alchemical texts is not anything to mess around with. I would definitely recommend trying to gain some control in whatever way works for you. This way has worked for me. Hexagram 45 is gathering. It's a short little definition. Unifying vitality, energy, and spirit. Gathering. Hexagram 45. And our supporting hexagram will be 57. Progress by flexible obedience. The way our primary hexagram, relating or supporting hexagram, and our changing lines give us an answer to the general question we bring to the oracle or the I Ching of how can I act in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. We can understand the answer to our reading by knowing our way around its main components and how they fit together and the different roles they play. If your reading includes changing lines, then you will need to understand primary hexagram, relating hexagram, and changing lines together. The two hexagrams in conversation with one another map out your whole answer. The primary hexagram shows you quite directly what your answer involves. The relating hexagram generally describes what the answer is about for you. It sets the primary hexagram in a broader context, an influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. If the two hexagrams map out a landscape for you, then the changing lines stick a pin in that map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. They are the immediate answer to your question as the most specific, focused part of a reading. Their message always takes precedence over all other elements. For example, the primary hexagram might describe a reassuringly secure situation, but a changing line could warn how insecure your position is within it. Hexagram 45, gathering. Gathering is developmental. The king comes to have a shrine. It is beneficial to see a great person. This is developmental. It is beneficial to be correct. It is good to make a great sacrifice. It is beneficial to go somewhere. Explanation. Gathering means assembly. As for the qualities of the hexagram, above is lake, joyful, and below is earth, amenable. When one accords with others, they are joyful, so it is called gathering. This hexagram represents gathering the medicines together. It follows on the previous hexagram, parting. In parting, one parts from mundanity by celestial energy. The path of parting from mundanity is a task to be done after obtaining the elixir. Before the elixir is obtained, if not for the work of gathering together the medicines, the elixir will not form. After people are born, habit estranges them from what is essentially near. They forget the original reality and pursue external artificiality. So their mind and spirit are unstable. Their vitality and energy are dissipated. It is not possible to immediately recover and concentrate the dissipated vitality and energy. It is important to be obedient and act harmoniously, progressing gradually in an orderly manner, not deviating from the process, applying the will single-mindedly, the longer the stronger, so that what was lost may be naturally recovered, what has gone may be restored. This is like a king coming to have a shrine for spirits. Ancestors are people's roots. If they forget their roots, people are disrespectful and inhumane. When the king comes to have a shrine for spirits, this is how to let people know there is a basis to be grateful to. People's original natural reality is like their ancestral roots. When people abandon reality and accept falsehood, that is like forgetting ancestral roots. If people can gather in their spirit and energy, cultivate essence and life, and restore the original natural reality, that is like not forgetting ancestral roots. When the king does not forget ancestral roots, he can unite the hearts of the people in the land. When practitioners of the Tao do not forget the fundamental, they can gather the great medicines of essence and life. But this matter of not forgetting the fundamental requires a great person to carry it out. It cannot be done by lesser people who do not know essence and life. Therefore, it is beneficial to see a great person. This is developmental. A great person is one who corrects self and corrects others. Correcting oneself, there is no ego. Spirit and energy do not dissipate, and rectitude becomes the self. Correcting others, there are no personalities. Character and constitution are sublimated, and rectitude becomes people. Rectitude becomes people. Correcting self and correcting others, inwardly thoughts do not arise, and externals do not enter. Inside and out are one single rectitude. Benevolence, justice, courtesy, and knowledge are all based on truthfulness. When the primordial is gathered together, essence is stabilized and life is solidified. Indeed, the benefit of development by gathering what is right is no small matter. What heaven enjoins on humanity is rectitude alone, and it is only by rectitude that humanity can answer heaven. Responding to heaven with rectitude, not forgetting the fundamental, is like making a great sacrifice to offer to heaven. It will not fail to bring about good fortune. But the way to make a great sacrifice and bring about good fortune cannot be accomplished simply by a moment of emptiness. It is necessary to tread the ground of reality step after step before one can achieve it. If you know but do not act on it, it is the same as not knowing. How can you then attain good fortune? So, it is beneficial to go somewhere. The value of knowledge is only in its application. Supporting hexagram 57, wind. Wind is small but developmental. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. It is beneficial to see a great person. Explanation. Wind is penetration and laying low, meaning gradually making progress by flexible obedience. In the body of the hexagram, one yin lies below two yangs. Traveling the path of firmness by means of the path of flexibility, not hurrying yet not lagging, gradually progressing step by step, obedient within and obedient without, obedient below and obedient above, going from near to far, rising from low to high, like the wind going farther and higher as it blows, reaching everywhere. Therefore, this is called wind. This hexagram represents progressing on the path by flexible obedience. It follows on the previous hexagram, richness. In richness, understanding and action are united so that one can deal with things adaptively. Passive or active at will, essence and life depending on oneself and not on fate. However, the path of uniting understanding and action is not easily accomplished. It cannot be done without the work of gradual progress by flexible obedience. If one is flexible and obedient, one can endure long. By gradual progress, one can penetrate. Flexible obedience, making gradual progress, getting stronger with persistence, working without slacking off, will eventually arrive at deep attainment of self-realization. Therefore, wind is small but developmental. But though the ability to obey is a way of development, there are those who know about obedience but cannot practice it. There are those who can follow the low but not the high. There are those who can follow the high but not the low. There are those who can obey when it is pleasant but not when it is unpleasant. There are those who can obey in the beginning but not in the end. All of these are unable to really carry out the path of obedient progress. So even though they try to follow it, they do not get through. When we look for obedience in which knowledge and action are both effective, firmness and flexibility are employed together, able to be above and below, competent in both ease and adversity, effective both in inwardly and outwardly, unified from start to finish, we find that only great people with balance and right orientation are capable of this. Therefore, it is beneficial to have somewhere to go, and it is beneficial to see a great person. A great person considers essence and life important, considers the Tao and its qualities valuable, looks upon the ephemeral body as like a dead tree, looks upon wealth and status as like floating clouds, is inwardly always more than fulfilled while outwardly appearing insufficient, truly applies real practical steps, making gradual progress, mind firm and will far-reaching, determined not to rest until the great path is completed. Therefore, there is benefit. Those who are not great people cling to partiality. They obey and follow without balance or correct orientation. How can they get anywhere, to any benefit? So the benefit of going somewhere is only for the great person. Our changing lines are 2, 3, 4, and 6. The X's and O lines 1, 2, 3. No, sorry, 2, 3, 4, and 6. And the general context of each of these changing lines, this being the most focused point of our reading, and it's good to understand what each changing line means. These could all contradict one another, but we're to take them all in and gnaw on that and see what happens. So changing line 2 is the heart's perception, the emotional center where you make and feel connections. Line 3 is an emerging identity, facing a transition with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. Line 4 is the capacity for action, asking how the work can be done. And line 6 is beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. So changing line 2 of Hexagram 45, gathering. Drawing in brings good fortune, no blame. If one is sincere, it is beneficial to perform the spring ceremony. Explanation. In the midst of 3 yins, all darkness, the whole body is pure mundanity. Yet, if one can go along with its desires to gradually draw it into guidance in the Tao, transmute its nature as materialized energy, and gather its nature of true being as is, the benefit is like performing the spring ceremony to honor the spirits, communing by sincerity. One at first blameworthy can thus become blameless. This is gathering in the sense of preserving rectitude even when weak. Line 3. Gathering, lamenting, no benefit. If one goes, there is no fault, but a little shame. Explanation. When one is ignorant yet acts on one's own, clinging to one's own mundane ignorance, alone and idly imagining attainment of the Tao, in vain, without reality, this kind of gathering must end in lament. Obviously, there will be no benefit. Luckily, there are wise people in view. If one goes and associates with them, borrowing strength to overcome weakness, one can still avoid lamentable faults. However, because one could not join upright people early on, but only join them after suffering from one's faults, it is hard to avoid a little shame. This is gathering in which the weak borrow strength. Changing line 4. Great fortune, no fault. Explanation. When one is strong yet able to be flexible, with yin and yang in balance, the restored elixir congeals, and the great elixir is within one's purview. Not only can one gather it at will and gain great fortune, one will surely gather it in an utterly impeccable state. This is gathering in the sense of solidifying the restored elixir. Hexagram, changing line 6. Sighing and weeping, no blame. Explanation. Being foolish and ignorant, mistakenly entering into aberrant practices, taking the false for the real, even if the celestial treasure is in sight, one cannot gather it oneself. Wasting one's whole life, when facing death, one will finally regret it. Sighing and weeping. One has done this damage to oneself. There is no blame on others. This is gathering that is careless in the beginning and ends in misfortune. Each of the 6 lines indicates something being gathered, but they are different in respect to right and wrong, aberration and correctness. When we look for balance of yin and yang and unity of strength and flexibility, we find it only in the yang in the 4th place. As for using emptiness to nurture fulfillment, comprehending life and essence, it seems to be only in yang in the 5th place. It is those who accurately recognize the real who are the adepts. Let's now read Hexagram 45 out of the back portion with more commentary. Gathering, keeping in mind that our changing lines were still the most focused part of our reading. Lake above, earth below. Moisture rises onto the earth, gathering. Thus do superior people prepare weapons to guard against the unexpected. Gathering is assembling. Above is lake, below is earth. Moisture rises onto the earth. When moisture is in the earth and rises onto the earth, everything on the earth is nurtured by it and flourishes. But there is a limit to water. It cannot always provide moisture for things. Sometimes things flourish, and sometimes they don't. This is the image of gathering. What superior people see in this is that when practitioners of the Tao get to where the 5 elements are assembled and have been returned to the source, when everything acquired is obedient to their will, if they do not know how to prevent danger and take perils into consideration, eventually what has been gathered will again disperse, and they will not be able to avoid the trouble of losing what has been gained. Therefore, superior people prepare weapons to guard against the unexpected. Weapons means the tools of wisdom, the work of silent operation of spiritual awareness. When the primordial has been congealed, it is not subject to injury by acquired conditioning. But it is still necessary to dissolve the influence of personal history before nature and life can be stabilized. If there is any remaining contamination, eventually conditioning will reassert itself and the primordial will again become fragmented. Therefore, this work of guarding is indispensable. If one can prepare the weapons of wisdom to avoid being caught unawares, one will always have autonomous presence of mind, and the jewel of life will not be damaged. After a long time, the 5 elements will merge and sublimate. Body and mind will both be refined, merging with the Tao in reality, becoming eternally incorruptible. So the process of preserving integration is important. And supporting hexagram 57, wind. Wind above, wind below. Wind following wind. Thus do superior people articulate directions and carry out tasks. Wind symbolizes gradually entering. Above and below is wind. One wind arises first, another wind follows after. Wind following wind is the image of a harmonious progress. What superior people see in this is that since practitioners of the Tao live with people, they cannot but have tasks. And since they have tasks, they must carry them out. Generally speaking, to carry out tasks calls for serenity, without rush. If one carries out tasks hurriedly and without first articulating directions for those who share in the tasks to clarify why they are thus and so, then people will not follow along, and the tasks will not be fulfilled. Therefore, superior people first articulate directions and then carry out tasks. Articulation means clarification. Directions are instructions. Tasks are whatever people should do, things like cultivating character, accomplishing works, accumulating achievements and deeds, taking burdens upon oneself for the benefit of others. Directions are not only the orders of the rulers to the ruled, the instructions given by the honorable and experienced people who exercise leadership in affairs to less developed people are all called directions. If directions are articulated before tasks are carried out, then the people will know those tasks are to be done. One person takes the lead and many people follow behind, so that all tasks are successfully carried out. This is like wind following wind, the two winds continuous, going together without mutual interference. This is the way superior people do good with others. We will also read our hexagrams from Hilary Barrett's I-ming, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future. Hexagram 45, Gathering. Key questions. What is asked of you? What are you investing in? Oracle. Gathering, creating success. The king enters his temple. Fruitful to see great people, creating success. Constancy bears fruit. Using great sacrificial animals, good fortune. Fruitful to have a direction to go. The old character for gathering shows people gathered like grass, or perhaps gathered to bring in the harvest. They have a shared identity and invest together for a purpose, looking for what will bear fruit. Sometimes this is an external gathering, sometimes an internal one, collecting yourself and integrating your many roles and strengths, getting yourself together. Many people, roles, energies, and issues are concentrated in this single focal point. The king enters his temple to connect his people with the ancestral spirits. This is a time to strengthen shared roots and understand mundane daily activities as part of a larger story and identity that gives them meaning. With this connection made, it is time to see great people. Originally, this might have meant consulting with diviners to ensure your offerings were made in harmony with the time and the spirits. Seeing great people, whether in the flesh or with your inner vision, gives you long-term guidance to align your efforts with your purpose. Longer-term guidance to align your efforts with your purpose. Then a steady persistence will bear fruit. And you are making great efforts, and an act of faith, investing the best you have in this gathering. You need those good deep roots and clear-sighted guidance, and you need to know where you are going with it all. Image. Lake higher than the earth, gathering. A noble one sets aside weapons and tools and warns against the unexpected. The reservoir has high earth banks, its water level higher than your home. You can grow more crops, but if it flooded, you would lose everything. Poised between intensity and overload, with so much invested in one place, the noble one takes special care. Inwardly, she is quietly resourceful and prepared for trouble. Outwardly, she communicates the need to stay watchful. Sequence. Gathering follows from Hexagram 44, coupling. They meet one another, then they assemble, and so gathering follows. Gathering means assembling. The gathering expands to encompass everything that meets together. Even the untamable, unpredictable forces of change that arrived in Hexagram 44 are integrated here. Pair. Gathering forms a pair with Hexagram 46, pushing upward. Gathering means assembling, pushing upward means not coming back. Before you can set out single-mindedly towards a chosen goal, you must gather your people and resources. The stronger your purpose, the more you will be willing to invest. The more you invest, the less likely you are to turn back. Investment and aspiration are two sides of a single coin. Supporting Hexagram 57, she calls subtly penetrating. Key questions. How can you get to know this from the inside? What is taking shape? Oracle. Subtly penetrating, creating small success. Fruitful to have a direction to go. Fruitful to see the great person. Subtly penetrating means becoming part of something or someone. It describes all-pervading influences like the wind shaping the landscape. You penetrate subtly by feeling your way into things, yielding gently to their nature. You shift your own ideas and expectations and come to understand the situation from inside, on its own terms. And so, as you allow things to shape you, you also reach a place where you can shape them. The old Chinese character for subtly penetrating shows a stand bearing the official seals a ruler would bestow on those he trusted. Someone who bows down and accepts a seal is submitting to the order of things, entering in and receiving his place within it. Then his seal, sign of personal authenticity, endows him with influence and the power to make his mark. Whatever penetrates subtly becomes influential, not by acting on situations or people to change their nature, but by becoming part of their nature and acting in them. Because it never acts as an antagonist, it never creates resistance and permeates everywhere. Such influence does not bring sudden transformations. It works imperceptibly, in tiny increments, only creating small success. It is useful to align all these small shifts with a single intention that lends direction to the changes. And, whether you see them in the flesh or with your inner eye, it's good to have a clear vision of the great person, a model of the larger possibilities implied by small success. Image. Wind follows wind, subtly penetrating. A noble one conveys mandates and carries out the work. Winds beget winds. Movement creates movement, and the influence penetrates everywhere. This is a time to use your own inner seal of office, to translate what moves you inwardly into your influence in the world. When a noble one receives a mandate, she conveys it onward by sending out orders, and so her indirect influence reaches further than direct action ever could. Sequence. Subtly penetrating follows from Hexagram 56, traveling. The traveler has no place where he is accepted, and so subtly penetrating follows. Subtly penetrating means entering in. The traveler followed his own path and minimized his interaction with his surroundings, not expecting to change them or be changed by them. But presently, the traveler must come home. There is a time for acceptance and the interpenetration of inner and outer worlds. Pair. Subtly penetrating forms a pair with Hexagram 58 opening. Opening, seeing, subtly penetrating, hidden away. Some things are in plain view, some are hidden away. Among people there is explicit communication, and there is the subtle interpenetration of lives in countless small ways. We'll read our changing lines as the most focused part of our reading again. Getting the general context of each changing line, we will read 2, 3, 4, and 6. 2 is the heart's perception, the emotional center where you make and feel connections. 3 is an emerging identity facing a transition with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. 4 is the capacity for action, asking how the work can be done. And 6 is beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. Changing line 2. Being drawn, good fortune, no mistake. With truth and confidence, it is fruitful to make the summer offering. Rather than confronting any mistrust directly, you are drawn gradually towards relationship and understanding. It's uncomfortable to be under tension, but it gives you energy and keeps you in motion. The modest summer offering is made in this forward-looking spirit, anticipating the harvest to come. The quality of your presence and trust is more important than the scale of what you have to offer. Line 3. Now gathering, now lamenting. No direction bears fruit. Going on, no mistake. Small shame. The gathering is not harmonious, and because it is charged with such intense emotion, you are acutely vulnerable here. The more you invest yourself, the more painful it gets. This is no longer a purposeful gathering. It's become a drama with no positive choice you could make that would lead to achievement. So, rather than asking loaded questions about where this is going, it is more important just to keep going anyway. The story need not end here. You may feel as if you really ought to be achieving more with this gathering, but hoping for more and making greater efforts is exactly what leads to lamenting. Line 4. Great good fortune, no mistake. You serve a larger objective and are part of a larger gathering. And you understand that you don't have exclusive responsibility for the outcome. It is good to be free to seek your place in this broader landscape. Your good fortune lies in your direction, at least as much as in where you find yourself now. And line 6. Heartfelt lamenting, weeping, sniveling, not a mistake. When all the sacrifices and demands feel like too much, it's natural to express your emotions. The messy extremes of feeling are not wrong, and you do not need anyone's permission to give voice to your sorrow. Break through the blocks to communication. Make yourself heard. We will read chapter 60, 2, and 1 out of the Tao Te Ching, translated by Jia Fu Fang and Jane English. Chapter 60. Ruling the country is like cooking a small fish. Approach the universe with Tao, and evil will have no power. Not that evil is not powerful, but its power will not be used to harm others. Not only will it do no harm to others, but the sage himself will also be protected. They do not hurt each other, and the virtue in each one refreshes both. Chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching. 1 was on 2, and I just flipped to 1 first, so apparently we're reading 1 and then 2. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestations. These two spring from the same source but differ in name. This appears as darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gate to all mystery. Chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching. Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another. Therefore the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating, yet not possessing, working, yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten. Therefore it lasts forever.